The key point and the mantra you really need to take with you is that you need to get in the practice of getting all of your agreements in writing. When you do that, that is going to be the biggest step you're going to take in getting your legal protection in place, because it's a thing that you can do very affirmatively and actually set the rules and not have to worry that there's some ambiguity.
Get ready to build, protect, and sell your expertise online with the Online Genius Podcast. You'll laugh. We hope you won't cry. But you'll always be informed and prepared so you can have the success you want. Here's your host, Bobby Klinck.
Hey there. Welcome to this week's episode of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klinck, and I'm really excited for today's episode because we're going to be continuing with the series of mini trainings about legal issues. I've gotten some great feedback. Had somebody point out that literally it was just what they needed on the first of those episodes. So it sounds like people are loving them, so I'm going to keep going with them. And this week's episode has me particularly excited because it is the subject that I am, in many ways, the most passionate about when it comes to this stuff. It's an issue that I'm passionate about because it's an easy way to help protect yourself and keep things safe and avoid disputes, but it's one that a lot of people miss out on, including me in the past. This week, we are going to be talking about the importance of written agreements in your business. We're going to talk about why you need them, what role they serve, kind of what they help you avoid, etc. We're also going to be talking about some of the common language that you could expect to see in these agreements. But then we're going to talk about some of the places where you definitely need to have agreements in place. And so we're going to kind of go through all of that to really give you a good crash course on what it is that you need when it comes to written agreements in your online business. Now, if you're enjoying this series, if you're enjoying kind of these mini trainings, I would love to hear from you. You can reach me at, by emailing me, bobby@youronlinegenius.com. You can find me on social, on Facebook or on Instagram. Just, look up Your Online Genius and you'll find my page, groups, etc., and give some feedback. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. But I want to now go ahead and dive in. But before I dive into the substance, I want to tell you my own personal story about written agreements and why I think this will help to inform you in a sense of why I'm so passionate about this. Because really it's a business issue as much as it is a legal issue. So here's my story. My story is that I started my own law firm not because I wanted to, not because I had some grand plan to do it. No, nothing like that. It was because I found myself having to leave my prior law firm when my daughter was 3 months old because we had screwed up and didn't have a written agreement in place. See, I joined these two lawyers at a very entrepreneurial law firm, and I was loving the work, and everything was going great. We were, I had no complaints about the way I was being treated or anything like that. But the problem was they were an existing law firm. They were a partnership, the two of them. And I was brought in to do that kind of work, but I wasn't formally a partner at the beginning, which you can understand, right? They wouldn't want to give me part of their business right away. But the problem was we didn't have a written agreement that explained how I would ultimately transition into that role. And so again, everything was going fine, but then my daughter or my wife gets pregnant, and I thought to myself, and I talked it over with my wife and just kind of realized, hey, we need to kind of formalize this deal, because the problem was the way it worked. I had all the downside of the law firm. If things didn't work out, I wasn't going to make money, but I didn't have any guaranteed upside because I wasn't guaranteed any, of the potential profits of the firm. And so I talked to my partners, and the problem was, and this happens pretty frequently, the problem was we couldn't come to a resolution. And not only could we not come to a resolution, the problem was that it literally came to a head in just this very short period. Literally on a Friday at around noon is when one of the partners, we kind of talked about it preliminarily before, but so we talked at Friday at noon or thereabouts. By 4:00 in the afternoon on Sunday, it was clear to me I was leaving the firm. And again, they didn't tell me I had to leave, but it was just clear to me that we weren't going to be able to reach a deal. And more importantly, when you have these kinds of negotiations, then after the fact, what often happens is because it's kind of a zero-sum game, people's feelings get hurt, et cetera. And so that's kind of where things were by Sunday. And we were at a point where I knew I basically had no choice but to go out and start my own law firm or, try to find something else to do. And I don't know about you, but that's not a place where I would want to be with a 3-month-old, but that's where I found myself. And the bigger problem that I'll tell you about, and this is also a very common result. These guys, these two partners at that law firm had become friends. One of them had literally flown through Hurricane Sandy on the last flight from Florida to the Bahamas, going through, Hurricane Sandy. At the time, I think it was Tropical Storm Sandy, coming into the Bahamas because he wanted to make sure he was there for my wedding. So that gives you a sense of how close things were and how close we had gotten in our time there. Well, I have not spoken to him since that Sunday evening. And that was over 4 years ago, almost 4.5 years ago. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you don't have written agreements. You end up having these disputes. And when you have them, what ends up happening is someone's feelings gets hurt and it'll destroy the relationship. Now, in your business, it may not be a partnership, but it could be with a client. Or it could be with someone else that you have some important relationship with, that if you don't have written agreements, you could end up in that same situation. And I want to help you avoid that. I want to help you, understand that you need to take steps to avoid that kind of pain. So I now want to dive in. But first, before we start with the why, which is a big part of this, I'm going to give you a mantra. The mantra you need to adopt is, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Again, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. And the reason I want you to adopt that mantra is it will get you to be thinking in the right mindset, which is that you should have a written agreement to cover every single relationship and agreement that is important to your business. If it would hurt you if the relationship were destroyed or if the other side didn't fulfill their part of the agreement, it needs to be in writing. It's just that simple. So I'm not worried about the water delivery guy. I'm not worried about, some little thing like that it's no big deal. But any type of relationship where it would be bad if the relationship fell apart or if the other party didn't perform, you need a written agreement. So you can kind of get to see that this is the very important part of your business and protecting yourself. Now, to understand why, I want to dive into the why. Why is it that agreements are so important? What are the benefits? What do they give you? And when we talk about that, that's going to help you to understand why it is that you need to have these with pretty much every counterparty you have or everybody you have a commercial relationship with. Now, I do want to start with saying that by and large, you don't need written agreements as a legal matter. There are a couple things you do. You need it for transferring intellectual property that's protected by federal law. So that's going to include things like your trademark, your content, which is copyright, et cetera. So in some sense, it's important to have agreements in writing with contractors and employees and people like that who are creating content for you because it might be legally required. But that's not the big reason. The big reason why you need written agreements is there are 3 pieces. First, it's going to make sure that you're actually in agreement, and you'd be surprised how often that doesn't happen. Second, it'll help to avoid disputes. And third, it'll help to resolve any disputes that come up. So let's take those in order. The first advantage of getting it in writing is that it forces you to actually make sure that you and the other party are in agreement about all of the critical terms. Now, believe it or not, many times people actually aren't in agreement. They maybe have talked at a high level like, oh, I'm going to provide marketing services for you and you're going to pay me X dollars. But that's as far as they've gotten. And what I would tell you is, to me, you don't have an agreement then, because what are marketing services? It's not clear. And so you may have one view and the other person may have a different view. And if you have different views about the services that are going to be provided, well, then that means you're not actually really in agreement about what the contract is. And so that gives you some sense that, of the kind of thing that happens, but it could also be smaller parts of the contract that you actually didn't agree to or you didn't come to terms on. Well, the act of putting it in writing is going to force you to work out those details because you're going to want to put in the details. And so that is an important piece of the advantage of having this agreement. And so again, what it'll do is make sure that you're all on the same page and that you don't have different viewpoints about what the deal is. And that is hugely important because, quite honestly, that's where a lot of disputes come up is people just weren't on the same page from the beginning, but they didn't realize it. So that's the first advantage. It's going to make sure that you are actually in agreement and on the same page with the other person who's a party to the agreement. Now, then the second piece here is that it's going to help to avoid disputes in the first place. And what do I mean by this? Well, what I mean by this is that if you don't have a written agreement, what's going to happen in any long-term relationship especially is you're going to end up having divergent views of what you actually agreed to. And this is not because one side is bad and somehow trying to pull one over on the other. No, it's a function of the fact that we humans actually don't have great memories. We think we do, but we don't. And we always tend to be the hero in our stories. So what that means is that if you don't have a written agreement and you go on in this kind of, let's say, a handshake deal with someone, and let's call it a client because that's the most obvious example, and you kind of move along. Over time, what's going to happen is your memory of what you agreed to do, for example, is going to skew towards less and less. And their memory of what you agreed to do is going to skew to more and more, meaning they're going to believe that you had agreed to do more than you actually did. And so what will happen is over time, that gap will get wider and wider. And eventually there's going to be an issue that comes up and they're going to believe that you agreed to do X, Y, and Z. And you're going to say, no, I never agreed to that. That wasn't part of the deal. And the problem is that just is going to happen because there's no record of what happened. There's no way to go back and figure it out. And that then kind of leads us into the third advantage, which is related to this second one, which is that having that written agreement in place will help to resolve disputes. So let's talk about this situation of a long-term relationship. So let's say 6 months into a client relationship, a dispute comes up about, did you agree to do X, Y, and Z or not? Well, there's two situations. One, you don't have an agreement. If you don't have an agreement in writing, well, there's no way to look. And the only thing that happens is you and your client or whoever it is have to rely upon your memory. And the problem is your memories are different. And so because of that, you're going to have a dispute. And how do you resolve it? There really isn't a way. So what's going to happen is that most likely, honestly, in most cases, you're not going to end up going to court because it's not going to be worthwhile for either side. But what's going to happen is one side or the other is going to cave. And the party who caves is going to feel like they were wronged in the deal and it's going to destroy the relationship. And so again, you see this, it's going to destroy the relationship is a big part of the problem. So that's going to ultimately end the relationship. So if it's your client, you're going to stop doing business with them. Or, they're not going to give you rave reviews because they're not happy anymore. And so you can see all of these bad consequences. Now, let's look at the other side. If you had a written agreement and that dispute came up, did you agree to do X, Y, Z? Well, there's an easy way to resolve it. You're going to go look at the agreement and say, does the agreement say I was going to do X, Y, Z or not? Because again, in your agreement, you're going to set out very specifically what you're agreeing to do. And once you have that set out, then you just go and look at the agreement and it either is there or it isn't. And if it's there, great, you're in good shape. If it's not, then great. You know that you don't have to do the work. But either way, both sides will be able to figure it out. And so it'll avoid those disputes and help you resolve any that happen to come up. So those are the advantages. And I think you're starting to see what I said at the beginning, that this really is a business issue as much as it's a legal issue. I mean, there are legal implications to all of this. For example, if you don't have an agreement and you end up in a lawsuit, it's going to be more expensive. It's going to be more expensive because it's your word against your business or your kind of commercial partner's word. And there's no way to resolve that quickly. It's just going to have to go a long, long time. Whereas if you have a written agreement, often you can resolve it quickly. So there are legal implications, but ultimately it's really a business protection issue more than anything else. And these agreements, because they have those business advantages, they often are some of the easiest, quickest ways to protect yourself because you can get that, just an agreement that actually guides everything. So that's why they're so important. Now I want to dive into the issue of some of the common clauses that you're going to see in agreements, and you're going to need to get kind of up to speed on this. And there's too many for me to go into in this podcast. I'm not going to, for example, talk about force majeure, which is the acts of God clause, which you'll see in some, and severability, which will say things like, hey, if part of this agreement is invalid, the rest, stands up, et cetera. There's a lot of things like that. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on those because that's not the point of this. I am going to talk, however, about 3 different parts of a written agreement that should really become a must. And the reason why these are a must is because they help to serve the purposes that we talked about, the why of what you want a contract to be. So the first is actually 2 clauses, but we're going to combine them into one. So the first clause is called an entire agreement clause, and then the second piece is called an amendments clause. So the entire agreement clause will say something like this, that this agreement, meaning the written agreement, is the entire agreement between the parties, and it will then often say something like that it supersedes any prior oral, written, or other agreements between the parties. So the purpose of that is saying, hey, this agreement, what's in writing here, this is it. This is the whole thing. There's nothing beyond kind of the 4 corners of this document. Then the amendments clause will say that this agreement can be altered or amended only by an amendment in writing signed by both parties. So the point of that, again, is to help you with this entire agreement. So the idea then becomes that when you have those 2 clauses, the only thing that one side or the other can really look to set an obligation is what is written in the agreement. If it's not written in there, it's not an obligation. This basically says, hey, if we have a disagreement about something, what do? We look at the contract. And you can't then say, hey, it's not in the contract, but you said. No, that's not a valid argument because the entire agreement clause says, hey, we put the entire agreement here in this written agreement so that we know this agreement is the rules. We don't have to look anywhere beyond this agreement. So that way it serves that purpose of helping you avoid disputes and then resolve any disputes that come up. And because you have the amendments clause, they can't say, well, yes, this is what's written, but we agreed afterwards, because you said, hey, anything afterwards has to be in writing as well. So that's those 2 clauses, and they should be in every agreement you have because they serve that important purpose of making the agreement the guiding principle and the only thing you have to look at to resolve a dispute. Now, the next clause I want to talk about is called a waiver clause. And this one has an important role because as an online entrepreneur, you're going to want to often be able to give grace to someone else. And what I mean by grace is that, hey, maybe they don't live up to a piece of the agreement this one time, but you don't want to just throw the agreement out. You want to have the ability to give them some grace and give them some leeway without giving up rights in the future. And that's what a waiver clause does. A waiver clause will say something like this. It'll say that any waiver can only be in writing. So in other words, the only way I can waive and give up any right I have under this agreement is in writing. But it'll then go on to say something like this, to say, and that the failure to exercise a right or enforce something under this agreement in one instance will not prevent you from enforcing it in the future. So again, let me give you an example of what that means. Let's say there's a clause that says, hey, you have to pay me on the 1st of the month, and if you don't pay me by the 1st, I'm going to stop work. And your client, let's say, calls you on the 1st and says, hey, I'm going to be late this month. I'm going to pay you on the 3rd. And you say, okay, that's fine. I'll keep working. I'm not going to stop because of that. And you might want to do that the first time. But what you don't want to become the thing is then the next month, if they again don't pay you on the 1st, that you don't want them saying, well, last month you said it was okay. So you can't quit on me now. You could say, no. I mean, last month I gave you grace. But this month I'm going to insist you pay me or I'm going to stop work. So it gives you that ability to kind of give some flexibility and allow things to work out. So that's the real advantage of a waiver clause. Again, you're going to want that in most any agreement. Now, as a legal matter, you probably don't give up rights anyway by not enforcing them the first time. But you want it clear and you want it in writing and you want no dispute about it. So that's what you want. Now, then the final clause you're going to want is a dispute resolution clause. And what this is this is saying, hey, if we have any disputes, here's how we're going to resolve them. And there are two options. Normally kind of the service provider or the person with more power is the one who kind of can decide this. But you're either going to say, hey, that any dispute that's raised, you've got to bring it in a certain court in a certain place. So normally you're going to say they would have to bring it in court where you are. So they have to, if you're in California, they have to come to California to sue you. They can't sue you in their home state if they're somewhere else. So that's one option. Now, the other option is an arbitration clause. And an arbitration clause, if you don't know what arbitration is, it's where you hire a third party to decide any disputes that come up. Now, this is, there's pros and cons of it. You're going to have to pay that arbitrator to decide it, whereas a judge is free, but you'll generally resolve those more quickly and more easily. And so you'll pay less than lawyers if you get there. Now, let me be honest with you. Most times you're not going to end up in a dispute that's going to either go to court or arbitration, but you want to set the rules generally in a way that favor you. So you generally want either your arbitration or your court to say, you got to come to me to do it. And then there can be advantages in an arbitration clause in some of your agreements if you, for example, are doing a one-to-many model. Having an arbitration clause in your course agreement can have value because you can say, not only do you have to arbitrate, not only do you have to come where I am, but you can't join together with other students and come after me. You have to do it individually. Now, again, I don't think anyone listening to this podcast is going to intentionally do anything bad or should be sued for anything. But the reality is that it's good to put these protections in place to avoid any incentives, to keep crafty lawyers, some of my brethren, from deciding that they think you might be an easy target. And that's what some of these agreements can do. So those are kind of three big clauses or sets of clauses that I think most every agreement should have. And that way, it really helps to serve the purpose of avoiding disputes, allowing you some ability to give grace, but also then helping to figure out how you're going to resolve disputes as cheaply and easily as possible. So those are some of kind of, like I said, the clauses you're going to want. Now we need to talk about what are the agreements that you need to have in place. Now, this is an easy one and a hard one. It's an easy one because the answer is, like I said at the beginning, every single agreement that is important to your business needs to be in writing. Every relationship that's important needs to be in writing. It's just that simple. So think of it that way. 100% of your agreements need to be in writing. Now that might not seem all that helpful because you're like, well, what does that mean? And you have to create a list. And yeah, part of this is you're going to have to create a list. You're going to have to think, what are the relationships in my business? And create that list and start kind of going down the list. But I'm going to walk through some of kind of the standard agreements that online entrepreneurs will generally need. The first one we've already kind of talked about. That's a client agreement. If you work one-on-one with clients as a service provider, you need to have a client agreement. That agreement, among other things, is going to set out very specifically what services you're going to provide. And then on the other side, what are they going to pay you? When are they going to pay you, et cetera? And I want to be very clear on this. When you're talking about the services you're going to provide, you want to be specific. You should have it very specific for both sides. And I want you to understand this. Whatever side you're on of the deal, you want to make sure it's specific. So if you are the person who's hiring someone, you want to make sure they have a service agreement that's specific about the service that they will provide to you. And let me give you a story to help you understand why you care about this. So this is from the perspective of a customer. I was at the end of 2017, or I think in December at some point, I had a funnel going and I wasn't happy with the results. I felt like I needed to get traffic in. I tried some Facebook advertising. It wasn't working. And there was a guy that I'd come across. He'd reached out to me at some point to help with social selling. So kind of selling through social media, but not with advertising. And so I reached out to him at some point. I don't remember why. He pinged me. I reached out to him. And, I think he watched my content and said, wow, this stuff is great. Or no, I guess he watched my webinar and said it was great. And so I said, hey, yeah, my problem is I got to try to get people in. And so we talked, and at first we were talking about social selling. He's like, well, maybe what we need to do is X, Y, and Z. And it was something a bit outside of his comfort zone. But he said, hey, but there's this contractor I work with who, works with my company who can help us with this. So he brings her in and we start talking, and she said, yeah, we need to set this up as evergreen because the problem is you're never going to have a ton of people in a week. And so she had all these logic, but she was supposed to, and they agreed that they were going to set up my evergreen funnel, including writing the sales page, writing the email copy, doing things like that, set up an affiliate program and get affiliates and actually recruit affiliates for me and do all this. And I can't remember everything else. And I don't remember the exact number, but we talked about it and I asked, hey, I want you to specifically set out what you're going to do each month. And so they set it out and they said, hey, in month 1, there were like 32 tasks they were going to complete. And then on an ongoing basis, it was not going to be as many, but it was going to be, there was, again, a list of tasks each month. And so I said, hey, this is great. Let's do it. I signed, I paid, as is the case in this market, you pay up front and almost all these things. So I paid. And the first month goes by and she doesn't get the work done. Not the guy I'd been dealing with. I knew he wasn't going to be really the one running point, but this other woman didn't. And so I kind of said, hey, what's going on? What's the deal? And we talked about it and they agreed, hey, there were some personal issues that had come up, et cetera. So I said, hey, what we'll do, we'll just push things out, instead of, so basically during month 2, it's going to be month 1 was the idea. And I think they were going to try to do the month 2 stuff as well. But the idea was I wasn't going to have to pay again that month. And so I said, okay, fine. And so we went along with this. And then month 2 comes along. And I mean, literally, so the woman never gets my funnel set up. She has this affiliate, like email to recruit affiliate set up that she sends over like 3 of them that she said, oh, here's what I think we should do. These were boilerplate canned things that didn't even have things right about my agreement. And so there was a problem, right? And so we weren't done. So I reached out to my guy and I just said, hey, we got to talk. We got to end this. So the point of me telling you this whole story isn't to give you some sob story about what had happened, but the point was because we had taken the time to write out the tasks very specifically, there was no dispute. They had not performed. And so there was no dispute. We didn't have to fight about it. The guy said, you're right. Hey, King's X, we're going to end it. I'm going to give you a refund. And I said, okay, great. And because of that, this guy, if I ever have a need that's in his wheelhouse, I will go back to him without question because he was honorable. There was no question, etc. Our relationship was preserved, even if this one contract didn't work out. Now, let's look at if we had not been specific. If the agreement had just said they would provide marketing services for me, I kind of would have been in trouble. Because they had, in fact, provided some marketing services, but it clearly wasn't what I expected. And so you can see here's the power of having these agreements written specifically. So really there's no issue. So again, if you think about it, if we just said they were going to provide marketing services, I would have been out the money I paid the first month probably because they would have said, hey, we did the services and we did some services. And I would have been sitting there like, this is not what I want. I would have canceled. I would have been out the money and our relationship would have been destroyed. So it wouldn't have been good for anyone involved. So that gives you a sense of why you need to be specific. Now, what I like to tell people here on this, when we're talking about being specific, you're going to lay out specifically what you're going to do. Often you'll do it in like a statement of work that's attached at the back of an agreement. And you'll want to lay out things specifically. But another good thing to think about is, are there things that you should specifically say will not be done? And so this is if there may be some confusion about this. I talk to web designers, for example, who tell me all the time that some of their clients mistakenly believe that, hey, a web designer will write the copy. And they're like, no, we don't write the copy. You got to give us the copy. Or we got to bring in a copywriter. But if that's the case, if that's the type of thing where you see that a lot of your clients or customers expect you to do a certain thing, you should put in very clearly that you're not going to do it. Again, that way, if there's an issue later, number one, you're in agreement at the beginning, but also if there's an issue later, you say, no, look here, we said we're not going to do this. So lay out what you will do, but also think about, are there things that you won't do that you should specifically say you won't do? So that's the idea. So that's one agreement you're going to need is your client agreement. And what you should have is basically a standard agreement, or if you have standard packages, you'll basically, let's say, have 3 different agreements that really probably only differ in the payment amount and the services you provide. But so you maybe have some standard templates you use. So you should go ahead and develop those so you have them. So you're not caught off guard. You can just have it ready to go. Then the next agreement I want to talk about I call it an online program agreement, but you might think of it as a online course terms and conditions. So this is basically the agreement between you as a course creator or someone who has an online program, a membership, anything like that, and your participants. So the people who take your class, the people who are your members, etc. It kind of serves the same role as the client agreement, but it's in this different context. And you're generally going to not have them actually physically sign it. You're going to have a checkbox somewhere where they agree to it, and it's a web page that sets out the rules. It's going to set out things like what they can and can't do with the content. It's going to set out what they're going to get. It will define things like if you say lifetime access, what does that mean? It's going to set out things like, hey, what's my refund policy? If it's a membership, what's my cancellation policy? How do you cancel? Again, that's legally required. If you have a kind of a recurring payment, you have to tell people how they can cancel. So there's all of that stuff. Another thing is you're often going to have something in there that makes very clear, like if you have a Facebook group, a private Facebook group as part of an offer, you're going to have something in there that, among other things, says, hey, if you break the rules of my Facebook group, if you start being abusive or something like that, I'm going to kick you out of that group and you're not going to get a refund. So things like that you're just going to want to put in there to protect yourself if there's an issue. You're also generally going to want to have in that agreement that there are no guarantees, that, you're giving them information. It's up to them whether they perform and how it works for them, et cetera. So things like that to protect yourself, you're going to want in that agreement. So that's kind of your second kind of agreement you need. And I'll tell you, I've had many an entrepreneur come to me who has a course and said, hey, so-and-so asked for a refund. What am I supposed to do? What are the rules? I said, well, do you have a written agreement? No. Do you have a written refund policy? No. I'm like, well, you should probably just give them their money back because you don't have a fight. Whereas if you had a clear refund policy, you could actually say, no, look, here's the refund policy. You didn't meet it. You don't get a refund. So you want to have that protection for yourself in your agreement, and that's part of what it will do for you. So that's that agreement. Now let's move on. There's now kind of two agreements I want to talk to at the same time because they're related, but they are basically they're agreements that protect your confidential information. So there's two kinds. There's a one-way, a non-disclosure agreement. This is what would happen if you are going to share your confidential information with someone else and they're not going to share any confidential information of theirs back with you. So think of it as kind of a one-way agreement. It puts an obligation on them that when they receive that information, they can't do a lot of stuff with it. It's going to say, hey, they can only use it for your business purpose. They have to destroy it or give it back to you when they leave. They have to take safeguards to protect it, things like that are going to protect you in that. The next piece then is you might have a two-way street. So let's say you and I were going to investigate potentially doing a joint venture together. You might want some of my confidential information. I might want some of your confidential information to figure out whether we want to do a deal. If that's the case, you need a two-way non-disclosure agreement or a two-way confidentiality agreement. It's the same as the non-disclosure agreement. It's just kind of drafted so that the obligations go both ways. So that's what you need there. Those are important. You shouldn't share any confidential information without getting those in place. Again, those are pretty heavy on the legalese because they just kind of are by nature a legal document, not something else. So that's that area. Now let's talk about some other areas. You will need at some point in your kind of life cycle as an entrepreneur, an independent contractor agreement, because you're going to work with independent contractors, a designer, a copywriter, a virtual assistant, anyone like that. If they don't have an agreement to give you, you need to have one in your back pocket that you can use. And you also need to have one that's ready so you know when you look at theirs, hey, is everything that needs to be in here included? This is where you'll remember way back when we were talking about why you needed the agreement. I said normally you don't have these legal requirements, but you do when it comes to transferring intellectual property. So you need part of that agreement to say, hey, anything they create during the course of their work for you. Number one, you think it belongs to you, but if it doesn't, they're transferring it to you and they're giving it to you. So that's a clause you need to have in these. So that has to do with content. So if you have someone who's writing content for you, they need to transfer that to you. So there's no question you own the content they create for you. Designs the same way. So that there's that piece. Then you're going to want to have confidentiality provisions in there so they can't use the secrets that they learn of your kind of secret sauce to compete with you later. And then you're going to have things that make clear that, hey, this is an independent contractor. I'm just going to pay you money. You're responsible for all your taxes and kind of things like that. And again, set out the nature of the relationship. What are they supposed to do with you? What are they going to get paid? Just so there's no agreement down or no dispute down the line. Then when you get to the point of hiring, you're going to have similar things. You're going to have an agreement that makes clear they're an employee. They don't get ownership. You'd be surprised, but often that happens. You need confidentiality agreements with employees, and you need intellectual property transfer agreements. So very similar to what you would do with an independent contractor. You need to have those in place as well. Now, that's a large part of it, but I want to walk through some other agreements that you're probably going to need. There's 2 sets of releases that you'll probably need at some point in your career, a testimonial release and a general publicity release. Before you use anyone's name, image, or likeness in your marketing for any commercial purpose, you need to get their permission. And some states require written permission, so you just need to have a policy to get these written agreements in place before you do that. Then you have I'm just going to go over these quickly. I'm not going to talk about them in detail. An affiliate agreement. So if you have an affiliate program, you need to have an agreement that sets that out. You might need a speaker agreement if you're a speaker, or if you're bringing people in to speak, you need to have an agreement that sets these things out. If you have someone that is your supplier for some part of something you're making, you need to have an agreement with them in writing. You get the point. We can go on and on with these things. If you have a distributor, you need a distributor agreement. So all those things start to add up, and you can kind of figure out, okay, anywhere where I have these relationships, I need to get those things set out. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those because the issues we talked about are the core agreements that most entrepreneurs are going to need. It's the client agreement, the online program or course agreement, because most online entrepreneurs at some point are going to do that. The confidentiality agreements, the 2 different ones. The independent contractor agreement, you're almost certainly going to need at some point. You might need employee agreements at some point if you get employees. And then those releases for testimonials and for other so if people are a guest on your podcast or those kinds of things. So you need to get those things in writing. That should get you sparked. But what you need to do, kind of your homework, is after this, go ahead and think through, are there other relationships you have in your business that are important? And if so, you need to go ahead and get those in writing at some point. So that's what you're going to need to do. That is the kind of universe of things you need to be thinking about. So that kind of brings us to the end here of this podcast, of this training session. But again, the key point and the mantra you really need to take with you is that you need to get in the practice of getting all of your agreements in writing. When you do that, that is going to be the biggest step you're going to take in getting your legal protection in place, because it's a thing that you can do very affirmatively and actually set the rules and not have to worry that there's some ambiguity. So you get these things in place, you get a clear agreement with everyone, and then you are pretty far along the way of having yourself protected. So I want you to go out and really start using written agreements and using them every time without fail and without question. So that's it for this week. If you're enjoying this, again, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, bobby@youronlinegenius.com. If you have questions, if there are topics you'd like me to cover, let me know. I want to serve you. Also, you can, find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook. You can do any of that, and, we'll be able to have some great conversations and get things moving. Also, if you're enjoying the training and want to go kind of have a lot of it put together in one place, I have a kind of training, a masterclass I do, Legal Made Simple, where you can get kind of a good overview of all of the things put together in one place. So if you want to do that, you can sign up for that at youronlinegenius.com/webinar. You'll walk out of that training knowing what you need to do to get your legal protection in place. Until next week, this is Bobby Klinck, and I hope you have a great week.
Thanks for listening. And remember to visit mistakes.youronlinegenius.com to get your essential guide to the 4 legal mistakes that can doom your business and how to avoid them. Join us next week for another episode to expand your online genius and your success.